Put down your baby and pick up a beer. Dad Jokes is back with another episode. I'm Jerry, joined here by Brandon. And Brandon, I'm excited because I feel like we are finally rolling with our idea. For those of you that don't know, this is the podcast where two first-time dads bring you through our life's journey in fatherhood. And until recently, I was only a father in the sense that my wife was pregnant, but we had our baby girl a couple weeks ago. Now Brandon and myself are both dads, and I am excited not only to be a dad, but to see where this podcast goes, Brandon. I'm geeked.
Geeked is a good word for it, Jerry, because that's exactly what I am. Last week's episode, or I say this week's episode, that just released a couple of days ago, it was my favorite one because I feel like I got to kind of relive my moment 3 months ago just in hearing Peyton's birth story. And I just can't wait till I think we figured this out a little bit. And now it's kind of kicking it into gear and having conversations about how we're raising our kids.
Well, not only that, Brandon, but we got Bryce and Peyton together over the weekend.
Yes,
we got to see a Michigan Big Ten championship in football, so they're both good luck there.
Go
and
Blue.
Exactly. And they got to spend some time together along with a couple of other friends and their kid as well. So that was a good time, kind of fun. They're obviously honorary members of the Dad Jokes podcast. So that is exciting as well. Today, Brandon, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about feeding, specifically kind of feeding in the early stages of the baby's life, the newborn phase, talking about breastfeeding, talking about bottle feeding, and we're going to go into kind of what you can do as a dad and kind of what to expect. But before we do that, as always, we got a couple things to go over. And first, a dad joke. Are you ready, Brandon?
Oh, I'm waiting with bated breath, Jerry. Also, while I'm waiting with bated breath, I think in listening to the last few episodes, I've been getting you lately. So it's time for you to redeem yourself.
You've stepped your game up.
Well,
You've stepped your game up.
I was getting pressure from our listeners that I was kind of trash when it came to these clean jokes.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you, Brandon. I saw this one a while ago, and I laughed way too hard at this joke. So I don't know if it's just me, but I think this joke is hilarious.
It's just you.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
How can you tell the difference between a crocodile and an alligator?
Alligator snout is round. Crocodile's is pointed.
No, you're wrong. It's by whether you see them later or in a while. Yeah, that one, see you later, alligator, see you in a while, crocodile. So
that might be the daddiest dad joke we've had on this episode.
Oh.
It was like three jokes combined into one. Because every dad everywhere has used the see you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile.
Yep.
Line.
Yeah, it was
decent.
I read that and I just started dying laughing. So I've been sitting on that one for a while. But I'm glad I got to bring it out. But Brandon, tell me what's been going on in the Banks household this last week. What have you guys been up to?
Well, it's been just a little bit since we recorded, so I have a few different things. One, Bryce turned 3 months old since the last time we talked, so we went from a little newborn like you have to a 3-month-old who is
huge.
Graduated.
He's huge. That's the word you're looking for.
By comparison, without question. And
without question.
And it was funny kind of seeing the progression of, like, you got Peyton, who's a couple weeks or potentially, she's a couple weeks old. I feel like I'm stealing your thunder.
No, you're good.
And then you got Bryce, who's 3 months old, and then our other friend Jace, or Jace is the son, is just turned a year. And just to kind of see the different sizes, you said Bryce is huge. I feel like Jace is like the next Shaq. It's just like the biggest. I don't know why he seemed like the biggest kid I've ever seen, and he's really not. But,
well, it's great too because his parents are short. They're not tall at all. But yes, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, and short is all in perspective because Jerry and I both are under 6 foot.
That is true.
But they're shorter than we are. So it was just great. You called him huge. He's graduated to 6-month clothes basically now. He's in that like 3 to 6 month, but like we put him in 6-month clothes and he's just like fitting it, which is weird. And then like you said, he watched his favorite football team, the Michigan Wolverines, make it to the playoffs. And the last thing is, it's the holiday season for us. We took him to a Christmas tree farm, and he got to pick out his first real tree, and we got it up in the family room right now. So
Did you cut it down?
Good week. So this is the story all about how I did not cut that tree down. I should have. We were kind of in a rush. We went to one tree farm and we drove past it. We should have read the Google reviews because it was trash. And luckily we looked up like the next closest one to us, and it was like one of the best tree farms I've ever seen. But we were pushing it like as far as the time. So we got a pre-cut tree. I will going forward always cut a tree down because the one we got last year, and the reason Jerry's laughing, well, I'm gonna give him a little credit. Jerry, we went together to cut trees down last year in a work function, and I was in the middle of cutting my tree. I'd probably been trying to cut, and keep in mind this is like a 10-foot tree, very substantial tree. Jerry was cutting his smaller tree down. I think yours was 11 feet.
It was very large. Put it that way.
It was bigger than the one I was cutting down by about a foot. And by the time I'm like a quarter of the way through, Jerry has his done. He has his like pulled up to ours, and he's like chatting with my wife. It's like negative degrees outside in my exaggerated story, and I'm like sweating. And I can't get this tree done. My wife's looking at me laughing. Jerry's wife's looking at me laughing. Jerry's looking at me. He normally would laugh. I think he actually felt bad for me. And he helped me cut this tree down. Yeah. So I will never live down the story of the tree. But
well, it's more funny too because, I mean, let's be honest, Brandon. One area where you do have me at is you are stronger than I am, and so
without question,
yeah, it was ironic because I'm not exactly bulging with muscles. I
CrossFit.
I'm more of a CrossFit type of body, but you definitely were struggling a little bit with that, which at the time I did feel bad, but after the fact it was quite humorous. So I'm glad you guys did a real tree. I love real trees. This is actually our first year without one. We still might change that. It's just with everything going on, it's been tough. But I absolutely love real trees, so I'm a big fan. And cutting them down is just fun, especially when the kids get older. I got to imagine that's going to be a great time. They pick it out. You help them cut it down. Especially with you having a boy. I don't know why, but it seems like boys probably like to cut down trees when they're 5, 6, 7 years old.
This one didn't when he was 29. So.
That's true. You did it. Oh, that's good. That sounds like a good week.
How's you guys?
Our week obviously the first few weeks home you're eventful. So Peyton yesterday turned 2 weeks, and our week was kind of crazy. I had my last week of paternity leave. I went back to work this past Saturday, and I worked the last few days, so that's been interesting. Obviously, that's hard. Brandon, you went through it. It weighs on you, but my wife, she sent me a lot of pictures and kept me up to date. So that's been tough. And, I love my work and I love the people I work with, but I'd stay home for 2 years if they let me. So that's been a little bit tough.
I agree.
Yeah. And then Peyton, you're starting to see changes, making faces at us. We've had, first baths, first, stories, different events we've done with her. And nighttime has been an adventure. Sunday night this week was the worst night we've had yet. And I swear she didn't sleep for more than 10 minutes. And then last night was maybe the best night yet. So it's up and down, and we're going through it. And we're going to touch on some of that in our feeding section today. But it's been exciting. I mean, obviously, we're the first few weeks of a baby's life is just full of wonder and new experiences. So I'm loving it. I'm a little tired probably, but it's been great. I can't complain at all.
It's funny, kind of seeing you go through these moments, and it feels like for me it was like years ago that I was going through what you're going through, and it's like you hit a point sometimes, and new dads listening to this, you're gonna hit a point where you feel like, what the heck is going on? You just want, like, in your mind, 30 minutes of sleep. Nothing is making sense. Your kid might be crying. It does get better, and in the grand scheme of things, it gets better pretty quickly. But when you're in the middle of it, it is. I do not envy that. And I know we still have some trying times to come. We just happen to be in the sweet spot right now. But I kind of got to hold on to that because it can get tough. But you'll pull through. She'll pull through. I'm saying that like she didn't have the best night of sleep ever. But I know how the first couple of days, a lot of times just like, oh, this is easy, I can do this, and then it seems like with Bryce at least, he kicked it into gear when we got home, and it was a rough couple of weeks.
Well, and you have no reference point early on. I think that's
Yeah.
part of it too. You don't really know what's good or bad and or what to expect. So as time goes on, you have more of a reference point. You have more of kind of patterns and habits that you pick up on. So that all helps. We're already starting to see that just 2 weeks in, and we'll continue to grow with that. But one thing I want to talk about, Brandon, before we get into our topic today, is we are baby gear nerds, and we like to share baby gear that is out there with you guys, the listeners. And my wife sent me a link to something today that I thought it was sarcastic at first. I won't lie to you. I thought she was like joking around about something, but apparently no, she really thinks this is something cool, and it's something that apparently on a bunch of the boards and pages she's on that the moms absolutely love. And so I'm going to share it and get your opinion, and then you, the listeners, can look it up and make your own opinion of what you guys think of it. But basically, Brandon, what it is it's the Oturu inflatable neck donut. And it's kind of, it's kind of like it sounds. Basically, it's a floaty that goes in the water around a baby's neck, and the baby kind of floats underneath it with their head in this inflatable blow-up thing, keeping them above water. And it looks hilarious to me, but apparently babies love it. And a lot of moms swear by it. So I don't know if we're going to try it or not, but I guess some people say it's a good way to get the baby introduced to water. They like it a lot. They enjoy it. It's safe. Obviously, you're there watching the baby, so I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Brandon?
So what people don't know is that we rarely talk about what we're about to discuss. We know the topic, but you and I like to keep it fresh. So you told me right before we started recording that you were going to kind of throw this to me, but I still didn't know what it was. I think your wife and my wife are on like the same message boards, because I got sent this within the last like week, and I'm pretty sure Kelsey's going to listen back to this and tell me if I'm lying or not, but I think she ordered it.
Oh.
So it's a one, we can be the guinea pig for you, but I think it's sweet. I looked it up again while we were talking. You got the cutest kids sitting there on the home page, but I mean, it makes sense, and we're weighing putting Bryce in like the aqua tots when he's of age, where they basically, and it's, I just can't. What I want to do is sign up for it, and I want to tell my mom and dad that they're the ones that's going to take him there, but not let them know what it is. And basically, for everyone who's listening, it's when you, in order to like get the kid to float, they basically take like the baby and just throw him into the water.
Yep.
And then jump in there afterwards. And babies will float. It's not dangerous, but if you have never seen it happen or are not prepared for it, it can probably freak you out. And I know my dad would probably jump in there fully clothed. It actually might be a good idea to just make that happen.
And then film it.
Yeah. But no, I think that's a great idea. It looks like it helps with like neck muscles, things like that as well, when they're in the pool. So I'm all in.
Okay. What about you? Any baby gear that you've researched lately or want to let people know about?
Well, research, I'm not sure. We're kind of always, nothing is sticking out in my head. We're always looking at new baby gear, but I can tell you something that we have in the house that I have gotten really acquainted with the last, I'd say, few days to a week, and that is the Oogie Bear. It's basically a nose picker.
Spell that.
OOGIEBEAR. Oogie Bear. It's for earwax and snot removal, and basically what we've used it for is sometimes your baby with those little bitty noses will have some boogers sticking out that you can't you don't have to use like the nose treater for. And I have just my wife, when she goes, and she's gonna be mad at this, sorry Kelsey, but she goes in and tries to get that booger. I don't know what it is about her technique, but Bryce cries every time, so she had to call Dad in. And I can get in and out of there, get the job done, no tears. So that's become my new favorite piece of baby gear over the past little bit.
So that gets the dad jokes pass?
That's a dad jokes pass, and we probably going to start the dad jokes pass or trash going forward. What do you think?
I like it. I think that's a good pass. I actually just looked that up because I haven't heard of that. And it might not be a bad idea. All we have right now is that little suction cup thingy, which I don't. Macy seems to get stuff out, and every time I try it, I feel like I'm just making the baby mad. I don't even know. I don't know if it's working or not.
Are you talking about the one with your hand, or are you talking about the one you actually have to suck out?
No, the one with your hand. It's like a little bulb. You like squeeze
you
it and then
see
like
Jerry's face right now when I said suck it out. He does
I'm
not
out.
like the idea of that.
Nope.
You got to get the nose treated, Jerry. It's going to come in handy. I'm serious.
Nope. We'll Oogie Bear it. We'll team Oogie Bear it.
That's just for things you can see. Sometimes you got to get in there with things you can't see.
You're not wrong. So, Brandon, let's go into our topic today, feeding, and kind of what we're going to talk about is obviously what feeding is like early on. And so, Brandon, both you and I, or our wives, not us, are breastfeeding our children, and that's...
Speak for yourself, Jerry.
Okay.
Bryce has tried a couple times.
Well, yeah, he's tried on you. Yeah, exactly. Peyton always, anytime I hold her and she's hungry, she like tries to eat my neck. And instantly I'll look at Macy, I'll go, and she goes, come on, because she knows what that means. She tries to.
It's pro tip, keep your shirts on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, our wives are breastfeeding, and that can be amazing, but also very, very stressful and kind of confusing. So I'll speak a little bit of our experience, and I'll let you go, and we'll kind of go from there. But early on, actually, Peyton did a good job of getting a latch pretty early on, and we didn't struggle that much with that portion of it, which was reassuring. One thing that helped us, though, even more so, was something they call a nipple shield. That was something that, as soon as that was introduced, it was a game changer. Like, we never really struggled getting a latch after that. And so early on, we had that going for us. But part of the problem with breastfeeding is you don't really know what the baby is getting other than looking at the diapers. And obviously, if the baby's going to the bathroom, they're getting something. So our problem became quickly on that the baby was feeding, but the baby was feeding a ton. They tell you a newborn baby should feed between 8 and 12 times a day, about every 2 to 3 hours. That's what pretty much every book, every doctor, every nurse will tell you. 8 to 12 times every 2 to 3 hours. Now, that's not like every 2 to 3 hours they eat. Sometimes it can be an hour. Sometimes it might be 3.5 hours. But on the normal is 2 to 3 hours. Well, Peyton sometimes will go 2 to 3 hours, but then she'll randomly want to eat every half an hour. And when I say every half an hour, it doesn't mean like she eats, stops, and it's a half an hour. No, she eats, stops, 5 minutes later, which has been a half an hour from when she first started, she wants to eat again. So the other day, Brandon, she fed 19 times. And
God bless you, Macy.
Yeah. And that's tough because you don't know, okay, is she feeding a lot because she isn't getting enough? Is she feeding a lot because she's doing it for comfort? Is she feeding a lot because she's going through a growth spurt? Or is she doing what they call cluster feeding, which is pretty normal? And for those who don't know, cluster feeding is basically there's certain parts of the day where a baby will eat a lot more regularly, so like every half an hour for 4 to 5 hours. And that happens a lot of times at night for whatever reason. So it's something that we don't know, but that's all can be very frustrating. So what we've done in that situation is we've tried to come up with a system where I can help out because otherwise Macy would get no sleep. And we've tried to figure out ways to kind of combat that, which I'll go over here shortly. But before I do that, Brandon, kind of what has been your experience with feeding?
So we had a similar initial experience as you guys. It was, like you said, when I say we, it wasn't me. At least at first. I was able to help out a little bit later. But Bryce straight away latched right away in his first skin to skin with mom. He was nursing, but it sounds like unlike Peyton, he was not getting enough milk, and it was because he had a pretty severe tongue tie, which if you listen to previous episodes, you know the timeline of kind of when we got that clipped. It was a week after he was born. So he was nursing, he was getting a good latch. We did have to call like the lactation specialist in the hospital, and they kind of showed us a few techniques, and then there was one really great nurse who showed us some techniques as well. But with him not getting enough milk, we supplemented with formula in the hospital once we realized that. So there was, once that happened, and I know you're going to go a little bit into kind of you guys' philosophy on that. We had similar initial philosophies, but it's kind of like what we have consistently said. Sometimes necessity will cause you to change your plans. You have to make an audible. So once that happened, he's been primarily on breast going forward. But I mean, my wife pumps, one, because she's back to working, but two, that helps me, and I help with night feedings. Which, a side note, I do think that helped and has helped with Bryce and I's bond to start a little bit. Just me bottle feeding him, and basically at this point she was exclusively pumping and breastfeeding going forward, and we haven't supplemented at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to go into a little bit, Brandon. Is that's the hard part as a dad, is if your wife is breastfeeding early on, they tell you, and again, doesn't mean this is the Bible, but this is what they tell you. Ideally, you don't want to introduce a bottle for 2 to 4 weeks. Some people say 4 weeks, some people say 2 weeks, but 2 to 4 weeks. And they tell you that you don't want to do that because you want the baby to basically have a good process and a good latch with mom, because if you do the bottle too early, they don't learn that, and then you can't go back to the breast, and they will only want the bottle. So it's not really, a lot of the doctors say it's not, people call it nipple confusion, but it's not really that. It's just kind of all goes into how the baby latches. So they say to wait 2 to 3 weeks. Some people say 4 weeks. Some people say a month. But any way you put it, you probably shouldn't do it in the first 2 weeks if you can help it. And that's tough because when mom not only can't get any sleep because the baby needs to feed all the time, but two, it can be painful. And I know for my wife, it was very, very painful early on. So she's in pain, which means she doesn't want to feed for that reason, and she's tired, and I want to help. And that's tough, but then it's like, okay, if you try to get the bottle too early, then it could just cause much bigger problems later on. So luckily, we were kind of able to get through that. It doesn't hurt nearly as bad right now for my wife. It's already been 2 weeks, which, during it seemed like forever, but again, in the grand scheme of things, after 2 weeks, she's pretty okay with it. And then what she's been doing is
He's
basically
saying that, but it's not his nipple.
1,000%. She probably will smack me when she says it. It still hurts. But what she's been doing is she's been feeding on one side, and then she's able to kind of pump on the other side, or use like a manual pump that basically collects milk on the other side. And we've
like
been
the Haka?
Correct. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it collects milk, and we've been freezing that. And so what's been tough for me the last few nights when the baby was being really upset, I was like, we have breast milk. I don't even have to use formula. I can just go get a bottle, and then I can help out. Macy can get some sleep. But luckily, we were able to get through those tough nights and weren't having to do that. We have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. We're going to start talking to the pediatrician about bottle feeding because, again, like you said, Brandon, too, you do want to be able to help out as a dad, but also you want that bonding time. So I, by no means, do not want to bottle feed or not want to have that time with them or not want to wake up. It's just doing it at the right time. So that's something we're going to introduce here, hopefully this week, if not this week, next week, based on what the doctor says. And there's other reasons too. Like they tell you not to introduce a bottle or to start pumping really until the mom's milk flow comes in. And so you don't want to do the bottle too soon because then you run out of milk. And there's a lot of different reasons behind it too. So that's kind of, as a dad, what's tough. So the big things, or what I was able to do, Brandon, to kind of help without literally being able to just feed, is when the mom feeds, when the baby's done eating, take the baby, burp the baby, rock the baby to sleep, hold the baby as long as you can, put the baby down. If the baby won't go down, stay up with a while so at least mom can get an hour or two of sleep before she has to feed again. That's how you can help. Because, again, if the baby just ate, even if they're cluster feeding, it doesn't need to be 10 minutes later. So sometimes they're going to give you cues, they're going to need to eat again quick, and all you can do is give them to mom. But you can step in, you can help out. Like I said, burping the baby and just taking the baby in a different room so mom can get an hour or two of sleep a couple times a night, especially if you're at home for a little while. So that's kind of been our experience, Brandon.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully it's because you are an active dad and want to participate in your child's life. That includes exactly what Jerry said. And oftentimes dads get the rap, and I'm telling you this from the perspective of someone whose wife is in a few Reddit threads. So I get an idea of what other wives and moms are complaining about, truthfully, or even, I guess, discussing as if it's normal. But in our society, it seems like it's pretty common for dads to play like a backseat role the entire time and put that off like, hey, this is the woman's job. what Jerry's saying basically, in a nutshell, is you need to care, one, and you need to. It's not only about your baby, but it's about everything your wife is going through in these moments. And it's kind of just the way women are wired, it seems, but they don't get the breaks that we do. And so not only that's me on my soapbox. I get on one of those every couple
preach.
episodes. But if you are in a position where you are needing to use a bottle or anything like that, there are certain bottles that are better rated, if you will, to emulate and simulate the feel of a natural nipple. In our research, what we landed on were Dr. Brown's bottles and some specific tops and nipples there. We have like skinny bottles, but you also have larger bottles that will help. Philips Avent are very popular as well. And we're not sponsored. That happens to be Dr. Brown's is pretty much what we exclusively use. But do your research, figure out what works best for you. It's not a one size fits all thing. Dr. Brown's might work for us, but it might not work for you guys.
And on that note, Brandon, I guess the Dr. Brown's bottles, one, I've heard the same thing. We haven't used a bottle yet, but I've heard that not only from research, but from actual moms who have tried a lot of different bottles. There's also there's another piece to that bottle that it's supposed to help with colic and supposed to help with indigest gas, the baby burping. But one thing you do want to do, regardless what bottle you have, is to get a slow release nipple size, like a slow flow, because there are different nipple sizes. One thing I didn't know about in bottles until obviously I started doing research, but that's very important if you're breastfeeding, because if you don't, that can really mess with the baby, because if the release is wider and they get a lot, they don't like the breast as much anymore, because the breast it is a slow release. So that slow flow is important for nipple size. And again, if you want to figure out what bottle works best for your baby, because not one bottle fits all, there's a lot of variety packs out there you can buy. And you can buy a pack and it has 5 different bottles in there. Figure out which one works. My sister, their kids, Dr. Brown's, and she actually was not happy because there's that extra piece you have to wash in every single one. But she said that's what works for her kids. And again, you just find what does work. We have a lot of the Philips Advent bottles, so we'll see if they work. Maybe they don't. They were bought for us. But it's figuring out what do and don't work through trial and error. But again, do some research about which ones are best for what stages, and especially when it comes to like nipple size.
Yeah, and it's not just the bottle; it's also the technique in which you're feeding your baby. So when we were with the lactation consultant, she actually recommended, hey, because we're using bottle and that's something that we need. One technique she recommended was holding the baby or holding Bryce on his side instead of just kind of sitting up to a degree, and then controlling the flow of the milk. And that would mean you let him get a good amount sometimes, you ease the flow up so he has to work harder for it. Sometimes you have the nipple still in his mouth, but you kind of take the milk away. It's similar to what happens if they're like not getting a good latch with mom. Because what happens if that baby is used to getting that consistent flow from the bottle, that's really kind of the frustration that comes about when they're breastfeeding sometimes. If they aren't getting that immediate satisfaction that you sometimes get from the bottle, that can be frustrating. And Jerry, you guys are in like the 2 week time frame. Something that is good to know is the journey doesn't stop immediately once you get it the first time. It's a learning process. And right now Bryce is 3 months old. Typically a woman's body will adjust at about that time frame, and instead of kind of always having a milk supply, they start producing milk on demand once baby is at breast. So that's a supply chain in my head is what I'm thinking, but it's like a supply chain thing that changes up. So instead of always being there, the baby does have to work a little bit harder. And it's amazing just kind of how women's bodies work. And like they know literally what to produce for the baby based on what the baby's doing at breast.
It's like those machines at Walmart that scan everything and know exactly what to order and when.
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, did you I'm gonna play a game of Did You Know, but it's in like the research and what Kelsey was telling me, like a baby can basically, so I don't know, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but like almost like send information, or a breastfeeding mom milk like makeup will change based on what the baby needs. It's like they're communicating with them. So if baby's getting sick, there could be something in the breast milk that is actually helping the baby. Not could be, it is. I mean, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, no, it is pretty incredible. So, Brandon, what would you say right now, 3 months in, the breast to bottle ratio that Bryce gets on average? I know it changes; it's not always the same, but like, what would you say that percentile is?
I would say during the week, it's he's probably 3 to 4 of his, let's call it 10 feedings in a day, are from the bottle. Part of that is because he's getting dropped off at my parents' house, so that obviously bottles are coming into play there. And then the one night feed from me as well. Other than that, if his mom's around, she's breastfeeding. Not if, I mean, she doesn't go anywhere. She's always around. So she's always breastfeeding. So at this point, it's probably 50-50. If anything, leaning a little bit more towards breast than bottle, just based on what Kelsey wants right now.
And then, as far as like the pumping goes, how often do you think Kelsey pumps a day? And do you have any recommendations based on what she's told you, obviously, on pumps that you can use?
So a couple things. One, make sure that if you are a mom who is going back to work, legally your job has to provide an area for you, or if it's a dad listening, your wife, to be able to pump. Right now she's pumping, I'd say every 2 to 3 hours at work, and she's pumping more now than she was a few weeks ago, because she's kind of hit that point where that 3 month time frame. So I know, I mean, she talked to me before like 1 o'clock yesterday, and she'd pumped 4 times already. She normally gets in at 7. And then, so as far as pumps we use, she does have a wireless pump. The name is escaping me right now. But she uses that like when she's driving into work. And then I'll put in the show notes the names of her pump, or by the time this episode ends, because I'm having a brain fart right now. But Medela is the name of her main pump. And it is, so I told you guys it'd come to me. That's something that basically insurance paid for. And that thing is like a freaking, I mean, it's literally a machine, but I mean, it goes. And she definitely uses that more than the wireless one. The wireless one is more for convenience. You can use that while you're working, use it while you're driving, things like that.
Yeah, so, I'm glad you touched on a couple things I wanted to mention. One, the Medela pump, that's a very well-known one. But like you said, insurance. Contact your insurance company. Most insurance companies will provide one for you, and there's a bunch of different options out there, and it'll save you a lot of money. So definitely look into that. The other thing is, obviously every baby's different, every mom's different, every situation's different. You might have to go back to work earlier than some other people, so you might have to pump more early on, which means you might have to get a bottle introduced earlier. That's okay. Just because something is the ideal situation doesn't mean that it works for you or your family. So the key is to, one, do some research, see why things are recommended a certain way, and then talk to your significant other, talk to your pediatrician, and figure out what works for you and your family the best way. There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of good websites out there. Figure out what works for you, And then when it comes to feeding, I guess the big thing I want to get across today to dads is that we can help out, whether it's through a bottle, whether it's helping with diapers, whether it's helping with burping the baby, putting the baby to sleep, taking care of the mom where you're getting all this. Like, I know when Macy feeds, it's funny. She has to get like 7 things before she can feed, it seems like, get set up. I know what she needs now, and I'll run and grab the stuff. Like, okay, you got this, and this. Great. Now you're ready to go. So she doesn't have to like walk around for 10 minutes, finding it in the middle of the night and then feeding the baby. So again, find a system that works for each other. Have open communication. It'll make your life better, the baby's life better, and your wife's life better.
Yeah, and that's something, even in grabbing kind of what she needs. It's definitely something, if I'm looking in the mirror, a place I probably can do a little bit better at. And the name of that wireless pump is the LV breast pump.
Okay. So, Brandon, I think we'll touch on feeding more and more as we go through kind of these podcasts, because things will pop up. Like you said, it's ever evolving. But I think that's a good place today to kind of wrap up the main portion of the show. But I do want to hear your dad jokes since you were bragging about how you've been beating me lately. Let's hear what you got.
Well, this one you're going to appreciate because anyone who knows me knows that I sneeze a ton.
You do.
And I have a weird little sneeze for a man my size. It's a dainty, cute sneeze.
Yeah.
I've been called many names over the years because of you say eh.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it cute. I'd say
I wouldn't
obnoxious.
expect you to call anything to do with me cute, Jerry. I'm just I'm explaining what I've been told. It's cute based on my size. So Jerry,
Okay.
what sounds like a sneeze but is made of leather?
I feel like I know this, but I don't.
A shoe.
That's not what I was going to guess.
A shoe, for anyone who didn't understand that.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, it wasn't as good as "See You Later, Alligator."
I may or may not give you this week just off it being purely clever. I do think I acted my answer out a lot better than you did.
Yeah, you have to go theatrics to get the win. I just go with content. It's okay. But a couple things I did want to mention, Brandon, is that obviously we're getting up there in episodes. Like I said, we got a lot of topics we're going to touch on lately. We're going to change up a few things in the show that we're excited about. But we are really excited that we've had some really big, podcasters out there, people that do classes for babies, things of that nature that have liked our Instagram page, followed us, liked our Facebook page. So that's exciting. We're starting to get some more traction. Please tell your friends about us. Please, like I said, like our Facebook page, like our Instagram, give us recommendations, shoot us texts, even let us know if you want someone to be on the show. We appreciate all the feedback that we get. It's been a lot of fun. I know we got Christmas coming up around the corner. We might even do a Christmas episode. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, I think we will too. By the way, I don't know if this is true for Bryce or not, but Peyton has a different Christmas outfit for every day of December. So I got that going for me.
Well, I was told by my wife that she would have a lot more fun dressing a girl than a boy, and she definitely wants a girl.
I think holding Peyton might have been bad for you in the long run because I think
dude, she was holding Peyton for like an hour and a half. I felt like I kept looking over. I'm like, man, you having a great time. We just had one of those.
It is funny how quickly, because Bryce to me was always like super small, but then after just having Peyton the last couple of weeks, Bryce looked huge, and then my wife had some friends over today while I was at work, and she was saying how big that their daughter looked compared, and they're about the same age as Bryce, and so it's just funny how quickly they grow. So it's important to enjoy every moment and take it all in, and take the 1,000 pictures a day that I know that we all do. So
yeah, that's what both of our phones are filled up right now. I have car photos and baby photos, and the babies are winning like 4-1 right now.
I like it. Well, for Brandon, I am Jerry, and until next time, you've been listening to Dad Jokes.